In 2025, my small garden saved us just over $1,100 in fruits and vegetables, based on what we harvested and what those same foods cost here in Ontario. Today, I want to break down which crops actually protected our grocery budget in 2025 and how that's shaping my planting decisions for 2026. When I totaled everything I harvested in 2025, paste tomatoes were the clear leader. Using the low end of what they sell for in Ontario, about $2.50 a pound, the 180 pounds of tomatoes I grew from my garden came out to roughly $451 in savings. And that number is still conservative because it's only based on fresh tomato prices. It doesn't include canned tomatoes, jarred sauce, or the price of tomatoes in winter, when the prices usually climb and the quality drop. It's simply what it would have cost for me to buy that same amount of tomatoes in the store. What's interesting about paste tomatoes is that they aren't terribly expensive per pound. And that sets up a bigger question for small gardens. Is it better to grow what we use the most or what costs the most? And that's where the rest of these numbers get interesting. After paste tomatoes, the numbers flatten out quickly. No single crop comes close to that level of savings, but a group of them starts telling a very interesting story. Potatoes are next. I grew just over 68 pounds, and at roughly 99 cents a pound, that works out to about $67 saved. Green beans were almost identical. I harvested 22 pounds, and because they sell for around $3 a pound, the savings came to just over $67. Cucumbers followed close behind, about 26 pounds at roughly $2.50 a pound for around $66 saved. Then carrots and onions, both right around $45 each, driven mostly by volume rather than price. What stands out here is that each of these crops got to a similar dollar amount, but in a very different way. Potatoes, onions, and carrots are inexpensive to buy at the store. The savings only really comes because I grew a lot of them. Green beans and cucumbers are different. They cost more per pound at the store, so even a smaller harvest makes a dent on the grocery bill. Once I saw that, the question stopped being, what can I grow a lot of, and became, what is expensive to purchase? And that pushed me to step back and look at the price of produce in Ontario. Not just what grew well, but what was hitting my grocery budget the hardest. Once I stopped looking at just my harvest totals and started looking at grocery prices, the picture shifted, because some vegetables just cost more to buy in Ontario consistently. Right now, the two most expensive vegetables to buy at the grocery store are sweet peppers and Brussels sprouts. They're both sitting about $3.99 a pound on the low end. That's 4 times the price of carrots, 4 times the price of onions, and significantly more than potatoes or tomatoes. And that matters because in a small garden, every square foot has a job. And if I give that space to something inexpensive, it means I have to grow a lot of it to see real savings. But if I give that same space to something expensive, the savings show up much faster. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop growing potatoes or tomatoes. They still feed us, they still have value, but that doesn't mean they automatically deserve more space just because they produce a lot of weight. When I looked at my garden through this lens, my priorities started to change. Crops like sweet peppers, Brussels sprouts, and green beans start to stand out. They're expensive to buy, they're nutrient dense, and we eat them on the regular. Leafy greens fit in here too. Carrots and beets still have a place, but as part of a more balanced plan rather than the backbone of the whole garden. Instead of asking just how much more food I can grow, I'm asking a sharper question. Which crops protect our grocery budget most effectively? And once you start thinking that way, it's very hard to unsee it. Because the logic doesn't just stop at vegetables, it carries on to fruit. Once I started thinking about vegetables in terms of grocery protection, it seemed natural to ask the same question about fruit. Because fruit is an area where prices climb fast and where a home garden can make a real difference or not much at all. When I looked at the average prices on Ontario, berries immediately stood out. Raspberries and blackberries sit at around $7 a pound on the low end. And that's not specialty pricing, that's just regular pricing for when they're in season. Outside of peak season, the price is often higher. That alone tells me something important. If I'm going to dedicate long-term space to fruit, berries earn their keep quickly. A small harvest replaces something quite expensive at the store. If you have small children, you know how quickly berries can disappear. Cherries came next at roughly $6 a pound. I don't currently grow cherries, but my family does buy them when they are in season, and when they come into the house, they are quick to disappear. A dwarf cherry tree that does well in Zone 6 is suddenly not just a nice idea, but a practical one that's worth thinking about. Then there's strawberries that come in around $5 a pound. I do grow strawberries, and after seeing those numbers, it makes protecting the harvest matter. Losing strawberries to squirrels is not just frustrating, it's losing real grocery value. This is where fruit areas in my garden start to feel more like opportunities and less like afterthoughts. Because just like vegetables, it's not about growing as much fruit as possible. It's about growing fruit that replaces expensive purchases. Of course, these savings don't come without investment. Seeds, soil amendments, tools, and water all cost money, and the hours spent planting, weeding, and harvesting all add up. For some, like me, time in the garden is a reward in itself, but it's worth acknowledging that those financial benefits only tell part of the story. Every household's math will look a little different, depending how much they value their time, what resources they already have, and how much joy or frustration the gardening process brings. For me, keeping costs low and making time in the garden enjoyable are both part of the challenge. As we head into 2026, looking at the garden this way gave me something solid to plan around. Not just how much I want to grow, but what kind of foods earn their place. Because if the average Canadian household is going to spend $2,000 on fruits and vegetables, I don't need my garden to do everything. I just need it to do the important parts well. In my next video, I'm laying out my 2026 garden goals. And if this video helped you think differently about your garden, I'd love to know. Which crop earns its space where you live?